Daniel Libeskind was born in Lodz, Poland on May 12, 1946, to Polish Jewish parents the year after World War II ended. His parents were Holocaust survivors, but living in post-war Eastern Europe, they found that the formal end of the Holocaust did not bring an end to anti-Semitism violence. As Libeskind told Stanley Meisler of the Smithsonian, "Anti-Semitism is the only memory I still have of Poland. In school, on the streets. It wasn't what most people think happened after the war was over. It was horrible." As a child, his parents wanted him to learn an instrument, but felt that bringing a piano into the house would draw too much attention. Thus, they bought him an accordion, an instrument that could easily be concealed. With this learned skill, Libeskind reached a small amount of fame at a young age. Libeskind and his family led a nomadic life. At 11, they moved to Israel. Here, he switched to the piano and eventually won an American Israel Cultural Foundation scholarship, which enabled the family to move to the United States. So at 13 years old, he moved with his family to New York. As Libeskind recalls, "I arrived by ship to New York as a teenager, an immigrant, and like millions of others before me, my first sight was the Statue of Liberty and the amazing skyline of Manhattan. I have never forgotten that sight or what it stands for." So although Libeskind continued to study music and the performing arts, as he grew older, he found it to be less and less satisfying. As he told The New Yorker, "Music was not about abstract intellectual thought, it was about playing. I didn't find it interesting enough. I couldn't see spending my life on stage." So as a result of these feelings of discontentment, he enrolled in the Bronx High School of Science. And later, when he graduated high school in 1965, he enrolled at the Cooper Union. Here began his study of architecture. To him, it was a degree that felt like a natural choice as it combined many of his interests, such as mathematics, painting, and the arts. He applied to the Cooper Union in part because of its New York City location and the tuition-free program, but also because the school was a center for theoretical exploration of architecture. And it was this kind of intellectual aspect that Libeskind felt was missing in his musical studies. Libeskind married Nina Lewis during his college years. After he graduated from the Cooper Union, he began to study at Essex University in England, where he earned his master's degree. And once he graduated, he worked at a few standard architecture firms, such as with Richard Meyer, but he felt stifled by the conformist attitudes and standardization seen in these offices. He felt strongly that he did not want to imitate other people's design ideas and architectural theories. So he decided to become a teacher. He taught at the University of Kentucky and at various universities in Canada and England, and later at the esteemed Cranbrook Academy of Art. In 1985, he moved to Milan, Italy, where he founded his own schools called Architecture Intermedium. So by the end of the 1980s, Libeskind had been teaching architecture for almost 20 years, but had not developed a building to fruition. In 1987, he got his big break when a project he designed for the City Edge competition for housing in West Berlin won first prize. The project consisted of a large angular bar that spanned blocks and streets, with one end at 10 stories above the street and supported on a series of angled legs. Berlin's reunification meant that the project would never be built, but the importance of the project to Libeskind's body of work is immense. The forms, angles, patterns, and cuts are formal themes that can be found in his work to this day. The Felix Nussbaum Museum is an extension to the Cultural History Museum in Osnabrück, Germany. It's dedicated to the work of Felix Nussbaum, the Jewish artist born in Osnabrück in 1904. Libeskind's first completed building, the museum displays Nussbaum's paintings done prior to his extermination in Auschwitz, and houses a temporary exhibition space focusing on the themes of racism and intolerance. The building consists of three main components: the tall and narrow central Nussbaum corridor, the long main section, and the bridge, which acts as a connection to the old museum. In its pathways, with their sudden breaks, unpredictable intersections, and dead ends, the building structure reflects the life of Felix Nussbaum. These are just a few more images of the space where we start to see some of the themes emerging that will reoccur in most of his later work. Now, the Jewish Museum Berlin. At this time, Libeskind had built his reputation as a thinker and a teacher. Because of this, he was invited to enter a competition to design the Jewish Museum in Berlin, Germany. He won the competition and in 1989 began work on the museum, though it would take nearly a decade to complete. Libeskind felt a special connection to the project, having lost so many relatives during the Holocaust, and knew that it was necessary to integrate physically and spiritually the meaning of the Holocaust into the consciousness and memory of the city of Berlin. The intent of the museum was to portray the entire history of Jews in Berlin, but Libeskind felt that the Holocaust was a defining event for Germany and German Jews and would need to be meaningfully represented. The long, angular zigzag form of the building symbolizes a flattened version of the six-pointed Jewish star, a symbol which millions of Jews were forced by the Nazis to wear on their clothing for identification. The shape of the building was also derived from the locations of the homes of some very important Berlin Jews. Libeskind plotted the addresses, drew lines to connect them, and used the subsequent shape as an influence for the building form. The building is made of reinforced concrete and covered in zinc. So within the museum, there's a series of spaces. One of these is called the Voids. Libeskind conceived of a space called the Voids, a series of empty rooms that run the length of the building but are separated from the exhibition halls. According to the Jewish Museum Berlin website, the line of voids, a series of empty rooms, expresses the emptiness remaining in Europe after the banishment and murder of its Jews during World War II. The voids stand for the deported and exiled masses and for the generations that were never born. They make their absence visible. The next space is the Garden of Exile and Emigration. And this was a space that was created to honor the hundreds of thousands of Jews who were forced out of Germany during the Nazi reign and to recognize those who were able to make new lives in Israel. The garden contains 48 pillars filled with soil from Berlin, the number representing the year 1947 when the State of Israel was established. A 49th pillar holds soil from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and in each pillar are planted olive branches, a symbol of peace. And then there's the Holocaust Tower. The Holocaust Tower is an area found at the end of one of the hallways. After visitors enter the tower, a heavy gate clicks behind them, accentuating a sense of finality and loss. To remind visitors of the inhumane conditions of the Nazi prison camps, the walls are bare concrete and the space is not heated. For the first 2 years after opening, the museum remained empty with nothing on its walls, and although it received some backlash, it ultimately propelled Libeskind as one of the most important architects in the world.